Of at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to all members of the public. Would you now please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the consent agenda as presented, including approval of the minutes of the regular Board of Education meeting on February 10th, 2020, approval of the proposed accounts for payment, approval of budgetary receipts and expenditures for February 2020, approval of the Committee of Whole minutes for February 27th, 2020, approval of option students, approval of the retirement of Ann Lewers and Jan Smouse, and approval of the resignation of Claire Weber and Delaney Woodruff.
Second.
I have a motion by Doris and a second by Steve. Jason, did you want to jump in on the finance?
Yes, just some quick bits of information financially. Expenditures for the month, bills $459,340, salaries and benefits $1,699,460, which brings total bills and salaries and benefits to $2,158,800.55. Revenue for the month was very well, very good revenue month. We had $2,027,274 worth of revenue. Some notes on that. We had $824,000 of special education reimbursement in this month, which is a little bit higher than typical, so that was a good month for us. And then also our state apportionment came in at $323,903, so that also attributed to that strong revenue month. Now, with that said, those things will start to trickle off as well as we move through. Good news, February is halfway through the mark for the budget cycle. So we're 6 months through the budget cycle, which means encumbered expenses could be at 49.98%. However, we are at 48.36%. So that means we're 1.62% underspent of our budget. That's good news. The not so good news is we've receded 50.27% of our predicted income. And again, remember, the income's the part, the revenue's the part you can't always predict. So basically all that means is we've received half, a little over half of what it is we're supposed to, and we have halfway to go yet. We've underspent 1.62%, so that's a good thing, but we know we still have the lean months of March and April to go, and most of May before we get some sort of booster shot from tax collection. So that's just, it's neither here nor there, it's just information for you to know and understand about the treasurer's report.
All right. Does anybody have any questions for Jason on that? Seeing none, can I have your votes, please? That is approved with 6 votes and 1 abstention. Next up, we have outstanding recognition. Dr. Nielsen, are you up with Jason?
Carol, you want to join me? Good afternoon, board. It's a great honor. I get a chance to present this month's Employee of the Month. This is Carol Altman, who's here with me. Ms. Altman has been an educator for 34 years. Carol wears many hats, but the one she wears the most is helping people. Carol is always willing to assist students, teachers, and administrators. She's able to troubleshoot computer problems, infinite campus issues, and even more special is that she lends a compassionate ear and often helpful advice in all aspects of the educational field. She shares new ideas, many related to new applications, activities, or new technologies, and teaches, plus demonstrates their use. Carol will stay as long as it takes, often at the end of the school day, to help problem solve. If a problem or question arises during the day, she will not hesitate to drop what she's doing and go up to a classroom or help a student. Beatrice High School has initiated a study group program during the lunch periods that's geared to provide extra time and attention to our freshmen that are struggling in one class or more. Students bring their lunch trays and eat while getting assistance with their classes. Carol is caring, patient, and focused on helping each student. She often talks to a teacher and then practices with a math worksheet or assignment prior to the study group so she can best help students with their specific problems or questions. She's become very good at math.
Only because of Pam Brown.
Carol stays in tune with new trends, especially in technology. She regularly attends conferences or workshops at ESU, NETA, or other professional organizations. She's often asked to make presentations, once again teach educators cool applications to use in their classrooms. She always comes back to share new knowledge and ideas with our Beatrice High School staff. Carol also co-teaches the new audio-visual media class. It generates content for and runs the new digital display in the Ozone. She has spent numerous hours learning Adobe Premiere Pro and Photoshop, two key components for the content of that class. She was at every home volleyball game this year to ensure the students were comfortable operating the video board system. She continues to seek out ways she can enhance the game day atmosphere for our patrons. And we get a lot of very complimentary comments, folks, about our video board and the things we're able to do with that. So a lot of those things are because of the work Mrs. Altman's done. Carol truly cares about the district and its patrons, fills needs where there are gaps. Carol started the clothing closet, a room off the library that is filled with clothing, shoes, and other items that have been a blessing to many students. She arranges the library space to accommodate the students and give them an inviting, warm place to study or collaborate with other students. She wants all the students at Beatrice High to succeed in and out of the classroom and truly does a superior job of meeting their needs. Carol is one of the most valuable resources to the students and staff at Beatrice High, as well as the district. It's very deserving to be honored as the Beatrice Public Schools Employee of the Month. We would like to congratulate Mrs. Carol Altman, March's Employee of the Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have the information portion of our meeting. Zach is not here, and so we will be skipping over the student update, and we'll head on to board reports. First up, Committee of the Whole, Mrs. Martin.
The Committee of the Whole met on February 27th, and we talked about, Dr. Nielsen told us about the new social studies standards that have been adopted, and that we'll need to make a slight revision because of that. Mr. Alexander talked about the cyber insurance quotes that the district is getting and encouraged us to review the complete proposals. We also spent some time talking about the strategic plan proposals and which we liked best, and we also were provided a handout that highlighted the details and listed the approximate cost. The bulk of the meeting was about budget and staffing update, and Mr. Alexander said as the district plans for the future, there will inevitably be rising costs in salaries, benefits, and utilities. So it's imperative that the district evaluate all staffing positions on an annual basis. He provided an overview on the timeline events that have occurred up to this point and how protocols have been established by the administration to evaluate every resignation or retirement while maintaining a focus on attrition whenever possible. Dr. Nielsen and Mr. Suter shared a research which provided options for the science department based on having 4 or 5 staff members. And Mr. Alexander closed by stating the district will still have positions that need to be filled for the upcoming year, but each will be reviewed carefully. And during the public comment portion of the meeting, Dave Henning, a high school science teacher, shared his concerns about the reduction to the science department, along with Les Garland, also a high school science teacher, addressed the board about the possibility of reducing a staff member. That ends my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have the stance report. Mr. Winter.
This is going to be more of an editorial opinion after I read the World Herald yesterday. LB 974 is taking most of the press time, and the one thing about the 974 that most of the big schools are interested in right now is that They worry that the finances, if the finances get tight, the state will cut back on state aid to schools, as has happened more than once in the past, leaving schools short of money and unable to make up the difference. I think the way that 974 is set up, it doesn't look too bad to us the first 2 years, and it's just the fact that the bill does not specify a certain percentage of money staying for schools that everybody, the bigger schools are all worried about. Looking on the other side of it, we were talking earlier here, small schools, on the other hand, that don't get much state aid or don't get any state aid, they kind of like some of the provisions in 974 because they would get an estimated $743 per student in state foundation aid the first year, raising to $2,416 per student by the third year. So you can see, I don't know if that includes all of the NERCSA group, but that's a lot of the people that are for 974 in its present state. Right now are the smaller schools. The ones that are against it are most of the larger schools that stand to be worried about our state aid in the future. And when we set it 49th out of the states in all the United States for state aid to education, it's something we need to worry about. One other thing, do you remember the bill that has to do with tax credits to
1202.
1202? That's the only, I've been reading a lot about 1202, and anybody in public education is, most everybody is against that, because every dollar of money donated to a private institution will come back to them as a dollar of tax credit. So, you know, if you got big donors, they stand to get big tax credits. The only thing with that bill is the future years, again, same thing as on 974, future years, it said the amount of money that could increase could be a huge amount. Could go from one state or something had recorded an increase from 10,000 to 90,000 in just a short period of time. So that's another one that's very much on the mind of all the public schools in the state. So that's pretty much everything that pertains to us, and I think everybody's got priority bills now, so they're trying to rally to get enough votes to get them onto the floor, and that's where 974 stands a problem right now. They don't know if they can even get back on the floor if they've got those extra votes, so that'll be interesting to watch. That's my report.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Next up, we have School and Community and Staff Relations. Mrs. Byers.
The Board of Education, School, Community, and Staff Relations met on Friday, February 28th at Lincoln Elementary with Trustee Erin Chadwick and myself present. The staff is appreciative of the full-time paras in the kindergarten classrooms. They continue to advocate for smaller class sizes and that 18 to 22 students. Family Fun Night was scheduled for that evening, and they were anticipating a good turnout. They had lots of cupcakes in their kitchen when I was in there. I hope they ate them all. There was discussion about the lapse between preschool and kindergarten, in that a 5-year-old cannot attend a public preschool after they are 5 years old and are eligible to be enrolled in kindergarten. At times, the 5-year-old is not ready to be enrolled in kindergarten, but they have aged out of preschool. So it would be beneficial for some students to continue in preschool, especially if they have an IEP. And that is not a district choice, that is a state choice. I just want to clarify that. Discussion regarding the budget proposal that had been presented at the Committee of the Whole meeting was held. The staff is still adjusting to the grade level concept, And the second graders were all changing into their swimsuits that day, and they were going to go swimming in the afternoon. And those lessons focus on activities, swimming lessons, and swimming safety. And that's been a very popular and well-received program. Maintenance of buildings and the lack of funding to address all building issues continues to be a concern. And the next School Community and Staff Relations Committee meeting is scheduled for March 20th at Stoddard Elementary. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you. Now is the time for public forum and citizens' request of comments related to the agenda items. Was there anyone who had wished to speak? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the discussion portion. First up, the first reading of policy 6212. Dr. Nielsen, you're up.
6212 deals with our state standards, and so this policy, we talked about the committee of the whole. This is us adopting the social studies state standards that the state board has approved November 2019. So we just have to go through the formality and make sure that we adopt those rather than creating our own. Any questions?
Thanks. Now we have the baseball field renovation. We were going to cover this in the county meeting, but our most important board member in regards to this was not here, so we'll have it now. So Steve and Jason are going to cover that.
I guess I can kind of get you filled in on this. This all started out a few months ago when we started discussing the possibility of building baseball field, softball field, and tennis courts west of the House of Orange. And once we started looking at that, the estimated amount of $2.5 million kind of ended our discussion in a big hurry. There's just no way right now that we can come up with that. But one good thing that's come from that is that now with Southeast Community College and Beatrice High School, or Beatrice School System, and we've got a little bit of city involvement, we have decided that a good way for us to go is to try to renovate the Christensen Field setup, and again, get it up to the standards that it should be to make it more presentable, not only for the local people, but for the people who come to play at our place. We've looked at several things. We're going to have a meeting to kind of prioritize the things that we're going to try to do. But the number one issue, I think, from what we've found, is that we would like to be able to put field turf on the infield, on the entire infield, all the way to the backstop and fences, and do the two bullpens behind the dugouts, and do those in field turf. We haven't gotten any bids on it. We did get some estimates of what the whole thing would run us, and it could run anywhere as high as $387,000 to turf the infield, down to, we've got one estimate that was about $100,000 less than that. So we're looking at a range from, let's say, $250,000 to $350,000. Now, when we get into time to get that, get it actually bid out, I think those prices will go down somewhat. So we'll have to find out how that goes. But there's a whole group of things that I think are going to come out of this meeting that we're going to be having to set up the project, because the field, I was a little bit involved with the organization of starting Christensen Field back in 1971. You'll all get a kick out of this. The entire field and donated labor, the entire field cost about $25,500 to build. And there was a huge amount of donated labor that went into that. So, you know, that's where a huge amount of the savings came from. But today, in today's world, if we have to get out and pay for everything, then we're looking at quite a large amount. But we're looking at possibility of some bleacher upgrades. We're looking at some parking lot and other upgrades having to do with the parking area, and just a series of things that need to be done to make the field a top-notch setup. One of the main fields in Lincoln we play on, Dan Hartog Field. Lincoln Public Schools just field turfed the whole thing, outfield and everything. And it was, I think the bid was $1.1 million. I think they actually did it for around $950,000, but still it was a huge project. So, but we think we can accomplish what we need to if we can get the infield, get the field turf there and just get some cosmetic upgrades around there. And I think with the group of the college, city, and school system, we can get that done.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that I want to thank Steve for his part of taking ownership in this and helping get the ball moving. He scheduled the appointments with the crews to come in and do the estimates, so I appreciate that, just helping with it. But we've met with SEC and they're on board with formulating the partnership. Essentially, since they've taken ownership of the field, I mean, there's been some minor upgrades to the field itself, but nothing substantial. So it's time for that to happen, and where we use it a good portion of the time for our competition games, we should also be part of that. And then also Legion Post 27, number 27 we're working with. But we've written, I think, 4 grants in the last 2 weeks. Missy has submitted one, so thank you, Missy, for your work on that. We've got 3 that will be going out at the end of this week, and we're hoping to write some more that will be going out in the coming months. So those we're looking to fund this primarily through grant funds and private donations. So, and then with the help of SEC, that doesn't mean we won't, as a school district, have to look at it when we get to that point, decide if we want to contribute to that through the Building and Grounds Fund, but we'll know that number later when we get closer to it.
Was flooding an issue down there in that area?
I think the worst flood that we had in the last few years was the water got within maybe 20 feet of the outfield fence.
Oh, so it really didn't affect
No.
anything?
No. So it is low in that area though, because I think the area just south of the field, that field usually gets flooded, and then across the road it does, but fortunately it's high enough. So.
Thanks. Anybody else have any questions for Steve or Jason?
Just thank you for commenting on the funding source, because maybe that should have been led with budget cuts and talking about buildings that are needing improvements. So it's nice that we're applying for grants and paying.
Yeah, well, I was trying to slip that past you.
I think it's just important for people to know.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have the second reading of Policy 8000, Code of Ethics. Mr. Alexander.
I'm going to tie these next 2 items together. Basically, the reading of Policy 8000 Code of Ethics and the second reading of Policy 8225 Conflict of Interest. Both of those are out there for you to take a look at. I haven't received any recommended changes or suggestions to these policies, so there's really nothing different from the previous meeting, but I do like the way they've evolved from discussion, and I think unless I hear differently, they'll be ready for approval at the next meeting.
Any questions for Jason on those? All right, we'll move on to the action portion. First up, approval of cyber insurance proposal. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the cyber insurance proposal from Travelers Casualty and Surety Company of America.
I have a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. And
I can give a
do
little.
you have something you want to?
Yeah. Basically, in comparison to these two companies, they're both pretty good companies, but it comes down to a couple different things. Travelers, price-wise, is the more economical company versus Breezely. Travelers was $6,466, Breezely was $8,100. But the Breezely proposal has some benefits to it that are not included in the Travelers option, which is a cause for the premium difference. One example is the dependent business interruption coverage. The Breezely coverage has $100,000 for that, where Travelers does not provide coverage in their proposal. So there's $100,000 of excess coverage in the Breezely proposal that Travelers doesn't have. But also the excess and surplus lines versus standard market. Breezely proposal is from the E&S market, which means it's not as protected by the Nebraska. It's not protected by the Nebraska Guaranteed Fund since they're not an admitted carrier. And it's underwritten by Lloyd's syndicate. So financial strength isn't an issue, but being a public entity is worth noting. So Travelers is on the admitted paper with an AM best of A++ rating as a public entity, being an admitted carrier or not have a different degree of carrier that a private business would hold. It's in our best interest probably to go with the Travelers. So that's why we would make the recommendation to go with the Travelers. Not just the price, but also because of its public institution rating.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Yeah, Jason, one question that I've found in the past on these cyber insurances, do you know, and I should ask you this before the meeting, but does our general umbrella liability policy cover anything on the cyber side, or are we just out of luck if we don't go to, you know, a supplemental policy like this?
Good question. What it would cover is the marine policy would cover any actual equipment failure or damage to equipment that couldn't be undone, but it would not cover any of the financial. So great question.
All right, anyone else? All right, can I have your votes, please? And we have 6 votes. Is that a no or an abstention?
That's, John, you need to move your,
Is that me?
yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying on that first vote, we have 7?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I lived you there. Okay, we have 7 votes. Next up, we have the selection of strategic plan proposal. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the strategic plan proposal from Cambridge Strategic Services.
I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Eric. All right, Jason.
Yeah, so a little bit of information about this, and some information that's come to us in the last several days. We've had a chance to look at some of the best strategic plan organizers in the business that are out there who have expertise and strategies for the most inclusive processes available. So we've looked at some of the best ones that are out there, and we've heard about them, but I think, so you couldn't go wrong in any of these selections, but I think what sets the Cambridge or Cambrian Institute apart is it's specializing in school strategic planning. And we felt like that was the stronger group to go with. We did have a conversation with Mr. Kastner that was here that night to present to the Board of Education, and his proposal would be capped at $20,000 period. That includes travel, that includes expenses, that includes everything. But he also gave us some suggestions on working with Matt Dominy from Seward Public Schools, who did part of their process internally to bring those costs down with Seward. So Dr. Nielsen did get in contact with Matt Dominy at Seward Public Schools, and we believe that we can save anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 on that cost by getting some help from the neighboring district that's been through the process with Cambrian and applying it to our process here. So that'll be something that as we get closer to that, we feel like we'll be able to access, but on the basis of everything that we've seen, we believe it's in the best interest to go with the Cambian Institute for what's been presented with a maximum $20,000 out-of-pocket expense. And then if we can bring that down, which we will do our best to do, we absolutely will do that.
Any comments or questions in regards to the motion?
Dr. Nielsen, is there anything that you want to add to that I didn't mention?
Matt has been trained through the process, so he just hasn't gone through a strategic planning process, but he's actually been trained on how to facilitate the process as well. So I think he will be a very valuable resource, and Seward has done, their strategic plan is attached, and so it's a very nice strategic plan. Very impressed with what they also have a nice trifold document that I have in my office, so if anyone wants to see that, it's pretty awesome too, that I think is a nice resource, because sometimes when the strategic plan is many pages long and you have to sit there and go through it, this is a great resource that just has everything right there in front of you. It's really cool. So I'm very excited about what Seward can provide, but also what the Cambridge group can provide us as well.
I think it's just important to note that there's a part of the process that we believe we can facilitate, but there's also a part of the process that we believe outside help just helps bring it all together. So we're going to work together as best we can to make sure that all that takes place and it's at a proposal price or a cost that we feel comfortable about. So we're going to try and make that all happen.
Would you be so kind as to send us that trifold
Yeah.
version?
Yep. I will scan it and send it out.
I think the important thing about Cambridge is that they put a real emphasis on bringing in stakeholders. I don't know if the others really didn't seem to be as focused on that. I think it's important for us as a district to get feedback from all people in the community.
All right, anyone else? Okay, can I have your votes, please? And that passes with 7 votes. All right, next up, we have approval of the superintendent contract. Can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the superintendent contract with Jason Alexander.
Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Eric. All right, Doris and I met with Jason last week, and I gave everybody a breakdown of what we had discussed, and that was everything that had been covered in our executive session. That was back in January that we had gone through that, January 13th at the board meeting. And so we covered through all that. The one thing I wanted to point out is it had been brought up, the attendance of fundraisers and social events with community organizations. And so while Doris and I were in there, we had decided that we should bring up the idea of allowing Jason to put in for travel and expense out of the 690 object line code for those community fundraisers and social events. If we are going to expect Jason to go to all of these, even if they are a fundraiser, or the donations wise, if he is supposed to be representing the school district, then that would be the school district that is donating. If we are wanting him to go personally on his own choice, then at that, I don't think at that point we can require him to donate in that requirement. If he decided to go on his own, then that would be on his own choice to do so. While I do feel it is very important to have our superintendent attend functions, there's also so many other things that, well, for one thing, the main thing would be family, which I know a good example is tonight, we have moved this meeting to noon today because we have several board meetings who would not be able to attend tonight. So we've moved that around because board members need to be able to go see their kids at the events as well. And you should expect to be able to have your employees attend their they're not their students, their family or children events. So if we're going to have an issue with him giving up his own personal family events, we shouldn't expect him to have to pay for it as well. So that was something that Jason felt was a fair option to put in there to where he can have, and Doris and I just decided on $500. The board can decide if that's a reasonable amount or if they want to do all of it. But there is a travel and expense portion to where it can come out of the budget for that. And so that would be the only change to the contract that Jason would be asking for. As far as the line where it says his salary, that will be left blank until the time of we go over the administrative and classified staff raises. So
I will tell you, this is the first I've heard of it, so I'm really not comfortable with it. I am also not comfortable spending taxpayer dollars on donations to organizations because there are so many organizations. He could get invited to 200 different events and they expect him to give $25 or $50 to each one of those. So I am not at all in support of using taxpayer dollars for donations within the community. Not that I don't think that they're good organizations, but I just think that it's a real slippery slope and I just can't see spending taxpayer dollars on that. And as a taxpayer, I would not be comfortable with that. I would not be happy.
I would agree with Janet. I think it's not appropriate for the school district to donate to different organizations. I guess in my opinion, I think there's lots of different ways that our administration can be involved in the community, be visible. It doesn't always have to be at the events where it's $50, $60, $70 per table, and I know that, and it does add up. But I don't think to Janet's point that it's appropriate that we pay for those events. Again, I think there's other avenues to be visible, and personally, I think Jason's done a great job of doing that recently. So.
The other thing I might say is, if there's family events, I certainly think that his prerogative is to attend his children's events and family events. And if that happens to fall on a community event, we just have to understand that we don't go to every single one either when we have a family event.
And quite honestly, I would say at most of these events, there is either one of us on the board, there's somebody else in administration, or there's other staff. So I think Beatrice Public Schools are represented well at all these events.
I agree, and that's something that we had talked about also in the meeting, was that we could have Jackie go. We have a assistant superintendent for a reason, and that is to make sure that we're represented when one is not in the district. So that was something else that was brought up, that we could be covered in that way.
Well, and I will just say the evaluation process was very good. I appreciate all the input in terms of the suggestions and also the affirmations. I appreciated everybody having their input. This is just an area where, to be quite honest with you, I'm no different than anybody else. I mean, I'm just me, and there's one of me, and I have a family, and I love going to watch our school. I mean, I had the best time this weekend watching our kids and our community participate in the state girls basketball tournament, and that's been the case for the past 3 weeks with everything that's happened, whether it's been state swimming or state wrestling or whatever. They've all been fantastic, and And I love watching those, and sometimes those school events come into conflict with community events, so then what do you choose? So I'm no different than anybody else, and the reimbursement's not necessary. I just go to the ones I can go to, and the ones I can't, I don't. But I just need that understanding from everybody that there are two things that I have to take into consideration, just like everybody else, and that's family first and you know, school events second. And sometimes it gets hard to hit all those when, I don't know how Mr. Randall does it with 600 plus school activities on the calendar. You know, there's a lot, but I enjoy going to the community events too, so not a big deal for me either way, just as long as everybody understands those things.
Well, then if everybody is okay with going with the way that he's been deciding to attend events and everything, and he did give me the previous year's events that he went to. I haven't gotten this year's accumulation of them, but as long as everybody's good with the way it's been going, we don't need to change anything, and the only odd thing we would leave is that one spot empty for the salary. So did anybody have any issue with just doing that? No?
I tried to talk Doris into a trip to the Edie, but she just wasn't going for that.
No, you didn't.
I guess I have one other question, and it just slipped on my mind because I was listening to him going to Tahiti. I know what it was. Does this have to be approved today? Is there a timeline and requirement?
No.
Okay. Then why wouldn't we go ahead and determine the salary before we approve the contract? And I don't like filling the blank after the contract's approved.
Simply because I was just gonna base that off of whatever the percentage is that the admin team gets. No more.
We don't know what that is yet, is that
No.
correct? Yeah, so I would prefer to have that filled in.
Okay.
Is your current
Maybe nobody
contract
else
expired?
cares, but it's my personal preference.
Is the current contract expired right now, or?
Well, it's not technically expired. I mean, I'll have a contract for next year irregardless, because the way it's stated is that if the board doesn't inform me of non-renewal before December 15th of the current year, then
It automatically renews.
it automatically renews, so.
So at this point, we can hold up and not vote until we have the actual numbers in there. If that would,
I move that we table this until we have determined what the salary is.
okay. We have a motion by Janet to table and a second by Lisa. Any comments or questions on that motion? Okay, can I have your votes, please? All right. And then we need to go back and do it first, so we should that take care of everything. That first motion.
No, that takes care of it.
Okay. Next up, consider retraction of Mr. Brockman's resignation. Mr. Allison, oh wait, can I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the retraction of Mr. Brockman's resignation.
I have a motion, second by Aaron.
All right, basically, I'm gonna turn this over to Mr. Suter, but just say that I've spoken with legal counsel on this situation, and what's being requested is perfectly legitimate to pursue. The only thing we're going to need some guidance on is directly writing up the contract, and I think making sure it's all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So I will just turn it over to Mr. Suter to kind of explain to you how this has all evolved, and then let you know that the details would all be finalized in making it possible. Mr. Suter, the floor is yours.
All right, so let me tell you a story. Early last week, we were contacted by Wayne State College. We have a student who would like to come to Beatrice and do their student teaching next fall. That student happens to be Hunter Weiss, who's a former Beatrice High School student who's gone to Wayne State to become a teacher, and he's an All-American wrestler, and he is interested in coming back to Beatrice and starting his career possibly. So with that information and knowing Chuck had put his resignation in, we had interviewed one candidate. This is a position we're looking to refill. We want to keep all the aspects of that program going, especially with our SENCAP and career academies and the welding aspect, that we continue to get notified that we need to continue to work on those things for our school, our students, and our community. And so I had a meeting with Mr. Brockman, share with him that we had a student teacher coming in that unfortunately is going to be a semester late. He left my office, came back probably 15 minutes later. He made a phone call to his spouse, and he is willing to retract his resignation. He would like to stay a second semester and teach until that candidate is able to be completed with their student teaching program. And then in the event that that student has met our expectations and things have gone well, and he's well prepared in those areas, we could be looking at then offering a contract to that student who would continue on that program. This is a student that Mr. Brockman shared with me. He was kind of grooming. The student has said for many years he'd like to be a teacher. Mr. Brockman said he had been kind of grooming this student in his event of retirement. It just didn't work out with his wrestling. He would have had to give up a semester of eligibility, and he's a good wrestler, and he wanted to continue that and not lose eligibility. So his plan got pushed back a semester. Chuck's willing to adjust his plan a semester. And to be honest with you folks, I think it's a win-win. I think it's a win. Mr. Brockman is excited to do this. If our district would retract his resignation, I've talked to Hunter Weiss and told him kind of how this could work. He's excited to return to Beatrice High next fall to be our industrial tech student teacher. So I'm able to answer any questions for you. We had Chuck fill out this, or write this letter to you, and I would like some action taken so I know what to do as far as how we're going to proceed. Any questions that I could answer for you?
I would have to agree, because I don't think I think it's very difficult to find high-quality teachers in that area.
Right, and it's hard not only for that area, Doris, but there's so many different aspects of that area. There's applicants that are strong in autos, and there's applicants that are strong in welding, there's applicants that are strong in CAD, which is computer-aided drafting, and this potential student teacher has some strengths in that computer-aided drafting, which is probably where Mr. Brockman's strengths lie. So it would be a good fit.
My only thought was, how did we get so lucky?
Yeah. I'll tell you folks, this is an example of a teacher who's a professional, who's willing to do what he thinks is best for kids, and he's really happy that the programs and the things that he's developed within our curriculum at our school would be able to be carried forward. And so kudos to Mr. Brockman. What a gracious offer. And he and his wife are wanting to do that. So I hope we can take advantage of that. So I guess, do I need to ask for a vote on, or we already did that?
Yep.
Or they're going to decide that?
Yep,
Okay.
they're going to decide that.
While I'm here, I would like to thank, you mentioned it, but I would like to thank our community for all the support for our Lady O basketball team, and especially to Coach Fairbanks over there for doing such a great job as an assistant coach. We had a great showing during the state basketball tournament. Our Lady O put an awesome performance, and what a gritty performance in those games. We have a lot to be proud of with those young ladies and our coaching staff. So I'll just throw that in too while I had a chance.
Thank you.
All right, any comments or questions before we vote? Okay, can I have your motions, or votes, please? All right, that is approved, 7 votes. Next up, we have the administrator's report. And we have the Ron Clark Academy, Mrs. Ripwogel and Mr. Hake. Hanky.
All right. Sit. All right. Good afternoon. Some of you may know what the Ron Clark Academy is because your spouse has attended. Some of you may not, but we have sent the last 2 years 20, I think it's 20, close to 20 staff members, teachers and administrators down to Atlanta, Georgia, to a professional development I would call it experience.
Yes.
I would say on behalf of the middle school staff, this is the best PD we've ever been to. I don't know if I'm.
100% agree, 100%.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Ron Clark is and what kind of the plans for the middle school, and then Betty's going to kind of piggyback on that to what her experiences are like and what she's done and is going to do at Paddock Lane. So, you know, when we looked at this, when we were talking about the board, you know, presentation, we want to look at, you know, the big picture of how this ties into what we're looking to do. You know, part of our strategic plan is to enhance, this is strategy one, enhance students' educational journey by creating compelling and innovating learning experiences, promoting individual goals, interests, and aspirations. The action plans and steps that follow through with that are 100% Ron Clark Academy. You know, increasing student and faculty engagement by creating compelling learning experiences. You walk into Ron Clark Academy, there's music, kids are dancing, there's kids sitting in classrooms with drums, but it's all, I would call it controlled chaos. Their system is so unique that, you know, we walked in and your jaws just hit the floor. So what Ron Clark is it's 4th through 8th grade middle school in Atlanta, Georgia. It takes students from various different socioeconomic tiers, if you will. There's 30 students per grade. They take 30% of their students from free reduced, 30%, or excuse me, low academic achieving middle, or 30% that are IEPs, 30% that are kind of the middle, 30% that are higher achievers. Most of them are in the free and reduced lunch category. This school was once a factory turned into a school. It's in a very hard, I don't know if that's not the right word, but
It's
very
fenced all in and locked up, so it's.
boards on houses. The area is not, you know, well-to-do area, but they're taking kids that are around there and creating an experience that you know is one of a kind. The biggest piece that I shouldn't say the biggest, but one of the biggest that we're going to take back from the middle school is they create what's called a house system. So within their school, they've got teams, basically, or houses, in which the first day of school, the students walk into the building and they spin a giant wheel. And whatever that wheel falls on is the house that they will be in. So they run up these stairs, spin this wheel, and when their PE teacher throws them down through a slide. And when they get to the bottom of the slide, there's the rest of the student body is just cheering, and where the wheel stops on is that's their house until they graduate from Ron Clark. And so from day one, basically, they're a part of something bigger than themselves. They're part of the team. You know, we see a lot of times where our kids that struggle aren't a part of athletics or activities, maybe have difficult situations with home lives or social interactions. That piece helps bridge some of those gaps about giving kids an opportunity to be a part of a group, no matter what their social status is or what sports they are or are not in or what their grades are, and working for a common mission. So a common mission within that team, and then the big pictures as well. So that's something we're going to look at implementing at Beatrice Middle School. I think it will help the academics within the school, the behaviors within the school, and just the climate in general. So that's one of my takeaways, and I do think if we can continue that experience in Ron Clark, I would definitely advocate for Jackie and Jason and you all to keep sending some of our staff members.
I agree with everything Andrew said. Along with wanting to provide professional development for our teachers, we also want to provide students with a multiple way to demonstrate their knowledge. And the experience of Ron Clark gave us the opportunity to actually see that in such a whole different setting than what we have now. I understand, you know, I had a teacher or two that went last spring, as did the middle school, and you know, you listen to them talk, and it sounded like, can it really be like that? Even though we watch little videos and everything, experiencing it is something totally unbelievable. As Andrew said, you know, the demographics of the group is is spread. There are children on IEPs and 504 plans. They're not to the level of some of our children's needs, which is certainly understandable. It would be difficult to have some of our special children in a building that music is blaring a lot, but it works as a focus. Honestly, the music blaring actually cuts down on the opportunity to be, talking to the person next to you or whatever. And it's not just in the hallways. The music is going on in the classrooms during class. Teachers, some of the uniqueness about that, first 2 weeks of school, children do not talk. It is totally no discussion back and forth with children, and they spend their time observing and learning rules and protocol and that type of thing. As I said, it was amazing. At Paddock Lane, we've already started the houses, and as you know, we came and did a presentation with our little kids earlier this year. On the way back in the airplane, the 4 of us from Paddock Lane are yakking already about some new things that we want to add. We love the house, and we think it fit in great with the middle school concept. It would really be a wonderful thing for them to add, and we are so open with sharing with the middle school and so happy that they are interested in it. What we witnessed there was something that we're beginning to witness at Paddock Lane. You would see the relationship between teachers and kids just be more than the normal relationship between a teacher and their student. They wear their house shirts with pride. We do it on Wednesday, they do it on Friday. But you could tell, even the teachers, when we would go in and it was on Thursday at the end of the day, we got to kind of decide what house we wanted to be in. So we were given, kind of a little synopsis of what each house was like. Interestingly enough, we were really spread through all the houses. I ended up in the most favorite house, but that's okay for those that didn't. But we had the teachers are really rah-rahing to get you to want to be part of their house, and it's just a whole different dynamic to explain. One of the things I've seen with that at Paddock Lane is that you see teachers, the first grade teacher, Mrs. Heidemann, who didn't have some of the, third, fourth graders, whatever, or Mrs. Breeden, who's a 5th grade teacher, obviously hasn't had first, second, or third grade kiddos yet, but on Wednesdays, they're all a family, and then throughout the week, they get to know each other, so they pass in the hallway, and the elephants will do their little, so everybody knows I'm an elephant, I'm not, but everybody knows they're an elephant, and they talk to the kids, how's your day going today? Which they normally would not get that. I've seen a couple of times where little sweetie is sitting waiting to visit with Mrs. Ruppel in the office, and one of their house teachers is going in to make a copy. They just stop and say, so what's going on? How come you're down here? They have a little visit. We have a little visit, and on our way everybody goes. So it's really a pretty awesome thing to witness, and constantly in change. You want to add new things. As a building, we want to improve our math scores and our reading scores and our overall etiquette in our building. All of those things get addressed in our houses too. So it's not just, this group wants to improve their math scores. All these kids want to improve their math scores. So I too thank everybody responsible for letting us go. This is, I would say, I've been around a long time, and I would say this truly was, without exception, the most dynamic professional development I've ever attended. We just went 100 miles an hour from the time we got up. Nobody walks slowly in that building. Nobody sits down. It is just active all the time. The teachers, we never saw teachers sit at a desk. The kids are so, I don't know, polite would be a great way to say it. We've seen some of the teachers that have gone.
And emphasize the soft skills amongst students of eye contact and a firm handshake and how to have a conversation with an adult. And so that was.
And when they answer a question, first of all, if it's a raise your hand, it's not always a raise your hand. If it's a raise your hand, the minute somebody is motioned to respond, everybody else's hand goes down. Nobody interrupts anybody. And I never saw that in all the rooms we were in 2 days. I never saw anybody interrupt. They're also instructed on how to speak to everybody. So you can imagine, we're sitting in classrooms, but there's like theater seats and chairs all the way around. And the teacher would just do a little this, and they would turn, these are fourth graders, and they would turn and give the reason for their answer to, 150 of us sitting there besides the students. They walk on the tables, there are things set up so they can take a step up and they walk around the tables. Kids help other kids solve problems. We saw fourth grade, fifth grade math. Oh my goodness. It challenged all of us adults sitting there. We could not get it done in 14 seconds or something like that. And the whole entire fourth grade class solved a multiple task problem, and it was excellent. When a correction needed to be handed out, it was done all silently with a sweep of the hand. They do have detention, if you do some things you're not supposed to do, teachers volunteer for detention, and if you get an hour or 2 hours, you serve it. There is no talking, there is no homework, there is no music, nothing in detention. If you get 3 check marks, you serve 3 hours on for Saturday morning. Teachers volunteer to come in and do it. They're that committed to the program. We ate lunch with a young lady that's she's a seventh grader. She's working on her resume to go to a private high school year after next. And last year's 8th grade class, 100% of the class got 100% scholarships to whatever private school they chose to go to. So pretty impressive.
I think the interesting part is that the kids will come in, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, from all various different public schools, whatever they're coming from, and they create an environment that, not all these kids have everything given to them or have, are coming for money or anything like that, but they've created an experience for kids that kind of change their outlook on school. This is something I do value moving forward. So the other part that I took away is, from administrative side, we send to teachers a lot of professional development opportunities, and there's always we're looking forward to lunch, or we're looking forward to break, or those sort of things. The whole 2 days we talked about school. Even when we were in the hotel or eating, or it was interesting in that sense where it wasn't. It was such a cool experience that it wasn't, I can't wait to get out of here sort of thing. So.
I happened to get to go to lunch or dinner with my cousin who lives in Atlanta, and his wife, and we spent our whole dinner time, a lot about family because we spread all over the world right now, but also tell us all about Ron Clark, so that was, they wanted to know too, they really wanted to know. An extraordinary experience. It's hard to put into words unless you go and see it, but an absolutely extraordinary experience of a group of people that are truly dedicated. Their belief is if we don't do something to corral education and make kids eager learners and effective learners and problem solvers, we're going to face a real challenge in the next 20 years or so, with kids not being really ready for the world ahead, and they're very much into it. He's a very interesting guy. He just tells it like it is, and he categorizes people as runners, joggers, walkers, and sitting on the seat, of a school bus. So we aren't going to go into that, but there was a lady there in the meeting, and she, when we happened to be in, she was more interested in kind of like how do you pay extra. Pay that kind of stuff. That I turned to somebody and I said, she needs to stop. She's digging herself in a hole. And some guy, he took about 3 steps to the left and did a shovel thing like that. Like honey, you're not getting it. So he's very, very straightforward, but very straightforward with the kids. There isn't gray area there. Very straightforward with the kids. They accept correction. Never once did we hear, well, how come? I didn't do that, or that wasn't me. Never. If you were corrected, you were corrected, and you just move on.
I did see some of that in the hallways, which I was glad to see because I thought these kids are kind of like robots. They just do exactly what you ask them to. But I did see some of the under the breath in the hallways, and where there weren't teachers. And I thought, okay, they are normal.
Yeah. But not in the classroom.
It's a magnificent experience, so thank you for all your support that allows us to send staff members.
Thank you.
I would just say thank you for noting the strategic plan, and thank you for being willing to go and help sponsor. I think the whole point of the Ron Clark Academy, as we discussed it, as we came up with the idea, was that we want our teachers to remember that all students can learn. Doesn't matter what demographic they're from, and it helps sometimes to see that in action and teach the behaviors you want, because sometimes I think we take it for granted that kids are going to come to us with the behaviors we expect, but a lot of times they haven't been taught those behaviors, and so the Ron Clark Academy is just a perfect example of those things amongst many others. But as we continue to do this, I think it's also important to note this professional development is paid for through Title IV grant funding, which means that it's federally reimbursed grant funding that's paying for the professional development. We're hoping that that continues, but as we saw today, when we got an email from President Trump's office, or from Mike Delaney, that President Trump's office is considering an 8% reduction to federal grant funds next year. We don't know if that will be this grant or the other grants that are out there, but it's just an example of why our support on a legislative and federal front is important, is to keep those types of programs going. So that's how that all comes to fruition. But thank you very much for the. We've also heard very positive comments from everyone that's gone to the Ron Clark Academy about how great it is. So.
Okay, next up we have the superintendent report. Jason.
Okay, first of all, thank you to all of you for adjusting your time schedule in the event that we do have an elementary concert tonight. That would have been, we would have been shy 4 members of the people that are sitting here right now, so it made it awful difficult to conduct business as needs conducted. So thank you for being flexible with that. A couple times a year, as we did last fall, we may need to do that, but we'll try and come up with different methods of addressing that as we move forward. I just want to echo what Mr. Suter said and take a moment to say what an awesome 2 to 3 weeks it's been for our entire school district and community. Whether we're talking about swimming and diving, whether we're talking about state wrestling, whether we're talking about state basketball tournaments, or whether we're talking about Read Across America last week, which I had a time of my life reading to core kids and reading to elementary kids and seeing the different activities that our teachers are providing for kids, not just in extracurricular activities, but also academic activities. We had a read-a-lot camp last week where we had kids in 2nd grade pitching tents, reading by lanterns as much as they possibly could, and actually cooking real s'mores. So there's a tremendous amount of exciting and wonderful things going on across our district. And I think it's been just a myriad of positive activities for kids. So a lot that our community doesn't see, but a lot that our